Welcome to Brett Finch Uncensored. Uncensored brought to you by PointsBet. Check out PointsBet's great odds and offers. Download the PointsBet app today and always remember to gamble responsibly. Today's guest, a very good mate of mine, long-time friend of mine and current and new Newcastle Knights head coach Adam Obrien. Welcome, mate.
Ritchie, thanks for having me, mate.
Thanks for inviting us into your beautiful house. How good's Newcastle? I'm obviously a Novocastrian. It's good to be back up here. It's a beautiful spot.
Mate, it's paradise. Newcastle, it's got everything that you want. Beautiful beaches and good cafes and pubs. And
mate, we'll get to it the season in a minute, but all in all, how have you enjoyed your move to Newcastle? It's a lovely spot, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's been a tough year, but the decision was the right one for me and Sharon, of course. I think the type of region, the community, the club, everything sort of suits what I'm about. So I think I'm a good fit for the Knights, and they're a very good fit for me.
Well, let's go back to the start, mate. You grew up in Bateman's Bay, down on New South Wales South Coast.
Grew up son of a country publican. Real country town, very coastal country, same as here. But yeah, it was an eye-opener growing up in and around the pub. I think from my earliest memory, it was in and around the old man's feet behind the bar, and grew up pretty quickly, seen some things that most young blokes would have seen growing up.
Mate, it's a bit like, I know it's a lot smaller, but Newcastle's very similar in it. They love a beer.
Yep.
Very knockabout, working class town. Yeah,
definitely. Very much a blue-collar town. Obviously, Christmas time, all the tourists turn up and spend their money and keeps the town going. But, it is very similar. There's obviously more choice here. I think growing up we had the pizza shop and the Chinese restaurant, and that was the only choice you had. But, it's a great part of the world, and it's produced some good sportsmen as well.
Mate, talking of sport, was it always footy as a kid? Did you start playing footy? What are the Bateman's Bay? What are they down there?
Bateman's Bay Tigers.
The Tigers.
Yeah. It was a funny story actually. I was 4 years old, and I think back in those days, I think the lowest age group was under eights. And
so you're playing 4 years up.
And the coach of the eights called into the pub on Saturday morning to, I guess, put his bets on with the SP for that day, and.
Who's the SP, the old man?
Yeah, I think he was, yeah. I don't think he can get in trouble for that now. But,
7 years, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think he was moaning that he was short some numbers, so the old man volunteered me. And
it's nice of him.
I think for the first, I was 4 years old playing against 8-year-olds. I think I sat with me mate and picked 4-leaf clovers for most of the game.
That's what I did in first grade. There's nothing wrong with that. Mate, you start your footy down there. You played with Bateman's Bay till how long coming through the grades?
Yeah, I played obviously all the way through the junior ranks, and then I started playing first grade down there in '96, I think it was, and that was about all I ever wanted to do. Really, I back when I was a young bloke, I think you had the Saturday afternoon ABC game, but my heroes were the guys, the guys that played at Mackay Park 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. I really idolised them and grew up. Obviously seeing them in the pub after games and usually after ball work nights.
And it would have been like that, wouldn't it? There would have been training, then back to the pub for beers midweek, and then play the game and then back to the pub for beers.
Yeah, definitely. The pub was sort of the epicentre of the footy club, and usually that's where the team got picked on Tuesday or Monday nights, well, all the old boys. And I really grew up idolising our local players and very fortunate to play first grade there. That was the number one goal, and we went through a stage there in I think it was 2000s. We made 4 grand finals in a row. We lost the first 3 and won the last one. So I always wanted to branch out. I ended up going up to Cairns with Brad Arthur.
What year did you go to Cairns?
I went up there. We won the comp in 2002, and I left about a week later. So I was up there in 2003. Returned to the Bay for a year. In 2004, then back to Cairns and bought a house up there.
Now, it's a funny story. In 2004, I was at the Roosters, and in 2003 and 2004, both times, we played Canberra down at Canberra late in the season on a Sunday. So what we did is Ricky would take us down to Bateman's Bay for 2 or 3, like the Wednesday, and we'd have 3 days, 4 days down there. Then we'll go to Canberra the Saturday, stay in Canberra the night, and then play on the Sunday. And we won the first year in 03, so we did it again in 2004, and we trained at the local oval, the Batemans Bay, the main oval where the footy team is home ground is. And Jeff Cox, who was a mate of Sticky's from Canberra, I think he was the coach in Batemans Bay. So we had an opposed session down there against the local team. And I remember after the game, Coxie goes, "Oh, mate, this is our halfback." And I said, "Oh, yeah, g'day, mate." And I start doing some extra kicking with him. Now, about 10 years later, when you're working at the Storm, you come up to me and go, "Do you remember that time you come about? That was you."
Yeah. Yep, that was me, mate.
We practiced kicking. You asked me for kicking, and I said, "How'd you go the next week?" You said you put about 4 out in the full. From my advice.
You're a huge help. Obviously, Canberra, Batemans Bay is virtually Canberra's beach. So Ricky and Dave Ferner and those guys often holidayed down there and become friendly with my old man, the publican, as most footballers do. They get mates with the publican. And Jeff Cox, he organised that opposed session, but it was a little bit surreal. I think it was only 5 years later because it was in 2009. So when you turned up down there, and we've been close ever since.
Yeah. Brad Arthur. So did Brad play down in Batemans Bay and then went to you went with him to Cairns?
Yeah, that's right. Brad come down to Batemans Bay in '97. I think Roy Simmons organised him to take on a head coaching role in the bush. He was always destined to be a coach, Brad, and I think he told the club he was 26. He was only 21, and
he told them he was 26.
Yeah.
It's usually because he wanted to coach. Yeah. It's usually the other way around, isn't it? People are 26 and tell them,
they're 21.
I'm nearly 46 and saying I'm 21.
But he turned out had an immediate effect on the group. We had a pretty lean year that year. Brad done his ACL, but in terms of the training content and stuff that we learnt, you could just see that this guy was he was always destined to go on and do what he's doing.
And then
now.
he just went to Cairns and had a bit of success up there.
Yeah, Brad went up in '98, I think it was, and I think his record was outstanding. I think he made about 8 grand finals, won 6 of them, and I followed him up obviously after the 2002 season and played a few years up there together, and then got to work together in Melbourne. Yeah,
so tell me how you get to Melbourne and how that all comes about.
Yeah, so Brad went down in 2007. He became the transitional coach, the development coach, which Melbourne really, they were the ones that started that transitional coach between the guys from first grade to going back to play reserve grade. And he spent a year there, and then I was really blessed that the under-20s had started up. And
was it the Toyota Cup back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So the Toyota Cup started up, and I think why I was really fortunate was Melbourne didn't have the dads down the road with the footy knowledge to help out, so they had to put on full-time staff from north of the border. So I managed to get I was a full-time under-20s assistant coach, so done that for a few years, and then obviously bellyache.
So what was the first year down there, 09?
Yes, it was. That was, So we went down.
09,
end of 08 we started the, end of 07. 08 was the first year.
Yep.
And then, and 09 was the year that we had some real success there.
Now, do you go down there in 2008 at any point in your career? Like, are you sitting there when you go down there thinking, I can one day be a first grade coach? What were you thinking when you go down there to do assistant job? Are your goals, do you think you can be a coach? Do you want to be a coach?
Yeah.
Or are you just saying, well, it's a gig, I can live in Melbourne, pays the bills for a while?
Mate, I never had those loftier, heights for goals, but I never wanted to stop playing footy. I always wanted to be a part of it, and I had a few injuries at the back end of my stint in Cairns, and then, to have an opportunity to make a living out of being involved in the sport, I thought I'm grabbing this with 2 hands, and I knew that I was at a pretty special place just in, how the Storm conducted themselves back in those days, and I just thought I'm blessed and I'm going to make the most of this.
Now, you're obviously still close with Brad, and your relationship starts before the Storm. But what were his strengths as a first grade coach? What did you see in him or learn off him?
Yeah, in those, even when he was coaching me up in Cairns, he was ahead of his time. We were doing video and stats and stuff like that well before, you know, it was bush footy up there, but he ran a really professional regime. But I think his best strength is he's a man's man and connects with players, and he was a tough footballer. He didn't ask anyone to do something that he wasn't willing to do. I clearly remember a game where he defended a couple of sets with a broken arm, and so he was. He taught me a lot. And in those days with the 20s, Finchy, it was. You weren't just their footy coach. You were, you know, the welfare guy. You were getting
was there a lot of guys in the 20s that were from out of town down there in Melbourne? There wasn't too many local kids.
No, I think Gareth Widdop and, you know, 3 or 4
so
other guys.
a lot of them away from their mum and dads and away from their families.
Absolutely. So, you know, we had a lot of, you know, welfare stuff with guys and missing home. So it really made you adapt to not just the X's and O's of footy. You had to be a bit of a mentor on and off the field for them.
Because that probably doesn't matter what you teach them at training. If their life's a shambles off the field, or they're missing home, or they're not eating well, or they can't get a job, that they're probably not going to be too good at training or put their best foot on the field, not put best form on the field. Sorry,
definitely, mate. And we actually found that the guys that were really settled off the field and actually doing something, whether it be work or study, they were your most consistent performers.
Mate, we look at that team. You won the competition in 2009. Lucky for you guys, the under-20s team wasn't cheating the salary cap like our first grade team was that year. It was the only time in my career I wasn't actually getting money under the table, which I'm quite disappointed. I didn't care we lost the competition. I was just disappointed I wasn't in on the raw. The 20s team, it's for... I'm not too sure of the figures, but there's a small percent of people who play the 20s or that went through to play first grade. That team... The development of players who've gone through, and not only just, you know, you've had people who might have played a dozen first grade games, but there's people who've played 200, 250 plus first grade games out of that under 20s team. Yeah,
that was probably the highlight of the year. Winning the premiership was, you know, it was an amazing day with first grade winning as well, having both clubs, both teams win that game. But probably the pleasing thing was seeing 9 guys out of that, you know. 30.
So we're talking Jesse Bromwich, Kevin Proctor,
Jordan McLean,
Gareth Widdop,
Luke Kelly, who went played.
Matt Duffy played for.
Yes. Yeah, so, you know, we had I think the club done an amazing job at recruiting those guys first, but to develop them and then push them up obviously helped ease some of the pain of 2010 for the club.
Yeah, exactly, mate. And your roles in Melbourne, so you sort of, you covered a lot of those roles coming through over the years before you were the assistant coach. You did the transitional job before going into assistant. Was that always the thing you could see, the pathway is moving up, that you knew the next, you were the development coach for a while. Could you then see, I'm a chance of being the assistant as well?
Yeah, I think that's when I became the development coach, or after that 2009 season, that's when I really started to, set some goals around, you know, transitioning up to be Craig's assistant. And I wouldn't change my pathway. I think that's been the greatest thing for me.
Yeah.
Presently was, you know, 2009, the learning curve of setting up a culture from scratch, and then that development coach, you're not so much worried about the team winning that they're playing for. You're just really bunkering down on details on individuals, and then to see them get their debut, that's your grand final.
Well, that's where we started. We were always close in 2010 because, you know, I was an older guy in the team and we were similar age. I always like a story. I've always just found there's a couple of examples for me, your loyalty. I think that's one of your greatest strengths. I remember we were out having a beer after a game in Canberra, and it was just me, you, and one of your mates, and someone did something with your mate. Anyway, my first reaction was to hide under the pool table. Well, you just was, you know, you went and supported him. And another occasion was when I come back from in 2016. I'd just come out of rehab for the third time, and it was about a couple of days before the grand final. And I come and see you blokes train at Leichhardt, and the following year, you got me a job with the Storm, helping you with the attack. Now, you probably didn't need help, but you went out of your way to get me a job because you knew I needed something, and it was a huge thing for me, and it was, you know, one of the best things I did that year. What do you find that loyalty to those individuals, you got that from working with them? Because I'd come back in 2013 and you did a lot of work, invested in me, even though I was 32 at the end of my career. Where do you find that's important, and even though you are coaching a team, to connect with individuals?
Yeah, I think that's hugely important trait to have, especially in the game that we're coaching or playing. Loyalty to each other and to teammates, I think is it's certainly something that I hold in high regard. And I was brought up that way. I was, fiercely loyal to my mates, my closest mates now, guys that I grew up with. I have a pretty tight circle of friends that I've remained loyal to, and they've remained loyal to me. So, and I think I've always viewed the coaching as how would I want to be coached and what would I expect if I was in the player's shoes. So I think, that's your duty to make sure that you're doing everything you can for the other person.
Well, that certainly helped me. I was at the end of my career. It was my last year, and I was playing a bit of first grade, reserve grade. I was majority reserve grade, and I knew that coming back to the role. But we'd play games, and there'd be 10 people there watching, 2 of them were my mum and dad. And it was half of then it might have been 10 of our blokes would go and play in the reserve grade team for Cronulla Sharks in the New South Wales Cup. So I'd be up there, we'd be driving the minibus from the airport, and I'm 32, I'm with 19, 18-year-old kids, Like I'm just thinking, what the fuck am I doing here, But what got me through was, you would grab me every week, and I could see the effort you put into video with my game, and I'm like, mate, don't worry about me, invest in the kids. But I could see how much you still put me. So then when I'd go play, and as much as I didn't want to be there, as much as I had these 18-year-old kids, I didn't even know who they were, who were sledging me and fucking calling me old, and we're playing in front of 6 people. That triggered me to go, well, you're putting effort into me. I'm going to make sure I put effort in my performance.
Yeah, I think, you're probably embarrassed to admit it, but you played such a crucial role in even the Storm today, developing those young guys, because you were clearly a visual leader that was there with them. And if you were there kicking stones, then certainly some of those guys wouldn't have developed as much as they did. So you certainly made my job a lot easier.
Maybe not Saturday nights after the game. I didn't make it a lot easier.
Oh, well, they need lessons in how to celebrate as well. But yeah, it was. Look, I really felt for you at times there, but you never shirked your responsibility as a leader of the club, and I was proud of what you managed to do that year. It was certainly not enjoyable to watch all the time, but certainly I got some proud moments of, watching you develop some young guys and giving them some lessons.
I remember that year, I probably would have had a couple of stitches my whole career. I'd played 280 games. England, I'd played over 300 games by the time I come back in senior games. The first game I played reserve grade at the end of the year, I have a head clash with my teammate, and I get like 17 stitches in my head. At the end, the little connection between, I got a boot and it's sliced.
Yeah, was that Penrith?
We're at Penrith, and you blokes coming in, the first grade team's coming in later, and they want to do, the old Hannibal Lecter, strapping, and I'm just going, listen, I'm that embarrassing. If you strap it like that, I'm not playing.
Yeah.
Like it's half time, and it was so sore because my eyes were watering, and all I could think of is if my head's strapped like that, the first grade boy's going to come in on their bus in the second half and see my head like this, and I could just picture someone like a Chambers. Yep. Like laughing, and I was just
would have been the one too.
And mate, I just remember I said, just let it bleed. I don't care if my nose. I'd rather my nose fall off than strap it up like that.
That was about rock bottom. To watch you in that much pain, and I really felt for you that day. But you went back out.
Oh, mate, and then I look. I always think and I could be wrong. I always think a coach's staff or his first grade coach's assistants is a reflection of him, of how he coaches. That's why I think you did so well under Bellyache. But was that something? Did you see something in Bellyache, or did he ask you to be a certain thing or change a certain way, or you just always had that hard work? From the day one I seen your work ethic was fantastic. Bellyache's hardworking, honest, loyal, reliable, all the things you are. Do you think that was what helped you get in there because you were similar to Bellyache? You had those similar traits that he's seen in you. So somewhere else, because you weren't a name, because you hadn't played first grade, someone might have got a jump on you, but you quickly went up the ladder there because do you think it was because you related so much to Bellyache and his similar traits?
Yeah, I certainly reckon that was the biggest factor. I think my work ethic probably stood out to him. He's very similar in terms of personalities to my old man, actually. So I sort of had that in my nature, I guess sort of that directness that that I use today with the coaching. But certainly, I think the greatest attribute I had at the time was work ethic, and I wanted to get better, and I was passionate about the club and the team. So I think that's probably what stood out for him. And I'm forever indebted to him to give me a start. It's no one knew who I was, and he,
Oh, man, I just think from when I was down there, you had amazing relationships with the players. I think you took Kevy Walters' position. So Kevy rolls into the club as assistant coach. He's got 6 premierships behind him.
Yep.
He's a premiership winning captain. He's an Origin player. So half the time, you don't have to sell yourself straight away because you're going to be listening.
Yep.
How hard was that for you? You're coming into assistant coach a team with Slater, Cronk, Smith. These blokes are the best in the biz, and have been successful through a career. How hard was that to you? Did you have any doubts? Were you thinking, will they listen to? Will they respect me?
Yeah, I think what helped
because you didn't have a 300-game resume or Origins or premierships behind you to sell it.
Yeah, it wasn't until I quickly realised that the players, as long as you're working hard and you're putting thought and you're prepared and you're going to make them better, they don't care what you've done. I think initially, obviously, it was something that I would, as I was less experienced, it probably played on my mind a little bit, given the calibre of the people that were there. But I think once they recognise that this bloke's going to work his backside off and he's going to help me, mate, I quickly formed a pretty good connection with them, and they're great guys too, so that helps.
What makes Bellyache so good? What makes him so special? I know you had a really tight bond with Craig. Probably, I know he's had success with a lot of assistant coaches, but just from my perspective, he seemed a lot closer to you than most.
Yeah, I think as I said before, we're very similar in personalities, and I'm quite close with Aaron, his young bloke. I think what makes Craig is he's an actual living visual of what he wants his club to be like. They're definitely a reflection of Craig. He'll outwork any opposition to death, and that's what he expects of his team. So I think being a really good example. I think when you're sitting down and Craig's interviewing someone to recruit to the club, one of the first things he says is you're going to work hard here and do your job. But because that's what he is every day. It's not like he's giving you this speech and then you turn up down there and Craig's late or he's not prepared. So that was a really big lesson for me, that if you're going to be one of the leaders of your club, do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. 2016, it was a tough year. I think it's a game Cronulla win their first premiership, but there's a bee's dick in it. It's a close one. You go back and reset now. Coming into 2017, did you realise, and I know there's some great teams, and I think it's one of the most dominant seasons any club's ever had, especially in the salary cap era.
Yeah,
an amazing team, or a team that would hold their own against any team from any era.
Yep.
Did you have a sense of what was to come when you come back to training after the grand final in 2016?
Yeah, I think the pain of 2016 really sat with the group. I think Craig and Frank Panisi done a really good job at setting up our pre-season for 17 on the back of that hurt. And we evolved. I think there always have been and always will be a defensive club, but at the same time, I just felt that when you got good defence, you can actually take some risk with your attack. If your defence is poor, then you better complete everything. So I just felt like at the time that we probably weren't playing enough footy. We were a little bit too structured, and the calibre of player that we had there, we just needed to free up a little bit. And fortunately, Craig and had some help with yourself, and Matty Johns gave us a hand as well. Craig was ultimately the one that said, "Okay, I'll let you run with it." And,
So you're the attack coach in 2017. Now you look at the teams that had been successful over the years with Melbourne, and it wasn't a really big pack. It was your Tolmans and Brett Whites, your Brian Norries, just your workers, Hinchcliffe, I was 5'8" one year. I'm going to compete to the death, but I'm not going to make a million line breaks. There were teams that would just suffocate you and outwork you, and all of a sudden we have this team that they'll go the length on you.
Yep.
And how hard was it to sell to Bellyache? Because he doesn't like change, and especially, but it's a great strength of his that he does evolve. But when something's working, you lose the grand final by 2 points.
Yep.
How do you convince Bellyache to change? But not only change, you changed a lot because you came one of the greatest attacking teams in the history of the game.
I think, well, the number one thing was to get all my ducks in a row and provide some evidence of where where I thought we could get to, and I obviously had buy-in from Billy.
But he's just coming. He's been out for 2 years,
Yep.
and you got a new 5'8". Munster hasn't played 5'8" before.
Yeah.
So is that a concern for Craig? Because Billy comes back that year and has a great year and wins the Clive Churchill, but he had no idea. The doctor said, look, you can rehab, but then they weren't sure he was even going to be able to play. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So how are you selling the Bellyache all these changes when your 5'8" hasn't even played a game in the six jumper in first grade, and your legendary fullback may not even get a game?
Yeah, as I said, mate, we were really fortunate that Craig did agree to it in the end, but having a clear plan on how you're going to do it is important. So this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And we trained the backside off it in pre-season, and we had some in the physical performance department. Dean Benton come on board in 2016, and we really seen some effects of his speed power program. But yeah, we trained the arse out of it in pre-season, and it started to look good. And the more that we got to see it on tape, the better we felt about it. And very fortunate that it sort of clicked for us all year.
And now the first time for a long time, we see Smith and Cronk and Slater. They'd been ultra successful at this point, but for the first time, really, they're playing behind a big, dominant pack.
Yep.
We're talking Bromwich, we're talking McLean, we're talking Nelson Sofa Solomon. Like, these are land of the giant type stuff.
Yep.
And they're getting 0.2 second play the balls.
Yep.
And now you're seeing these blokes, Smithy getting to play off these blokes. Those blokes were huge, weren't they? Obviously your Munsters and the big three are getting Chambers. Those blokes are getting the raps, but geez, those boys in the middle did some damage.
Absolutely, and that in itself was another massive variable. We had this, world class 9 that we weren't using him as good as we could, and we had to get some personnel in and around him to really get the best out of Smithy, and those big guys did that and allowed. Once you create, space and time, then those other guys can just do what they do.
Now, the season that happens, what was the normal roles you would play? Because I know one thing from my time down there, and it's probably something you'll take into your coaching. Bellyache's really, like early in the week, you would take a lot of the sessions. You take parts of it. Rolsey, the defence coach, might take. Early in the week, Bellyache might not say a thing.
Yep.
What are the roles there? What do you discuss at training, and who's got what? And is it similar things each week, or like for videos, you might do a lot of the video one day, and then the next day it's Bellyache, and then
Yep. Yeah, obviously a lot of planning goes into the week, and again, why I'm here today is because of Craig's trust that he puts in his staff, and there's a reason why he's the Belichick of the NRL. With pushed out so many head coaches, is because as an assistant there, you're not just there to put the cones out and run a couple of skill drills. You have an area, and once he gives you that responsibility, then it's up to you to run with it. And
what do you ever go, mate? I don't think you give you advice on the run. Like, I need you to do this more. I don't think that would work. Or
yeah, definitely, you're in constant dialogue with each other. I guess the other thing that I was really fortunate with was Craig's love for defence didn't drift him over into the attack too much. So he sort of left me alone there. And I'd often find, of a morning he'd see something in the opposition that he thought we could use for an attack. And if I paused for a little bit, he'd say, don't worry about it. That probably won't work anyway. So he's sort of a little bit insecure with the attack there for a bit. But, look, it's really structured down there, the way everybody does their job, and whether it be meetings or the training sessions, everything's really well planned, and I guess that's what you want from your assistants, is to take some pressure off the head coach that he doesn't need to be there for every meeting, he just needs to be there for the last one.
And I guess it's a bit like your Smithy, you're putting people around you that's going to help you, and
definitely.
And I guess as a coach, you don't want yes men, you want men who are going to to get you better and make you better as a coach as well.
Absolutely. Some of the best meetings, that you were involved with as well was what we called the spine meetings, and you're putting, Cameron Smith, Cooper Cronk, yourself, Billy Slater. Will Chambers was exceptional in those meetings where you're just bouncing ideas off each other, and, I owe a lot to those players as well.
I used to love sitting in the meetings with those meetings, and Billy would have a night. Billy would have a play. Billy would go, and I'd be sitting next to Smithy up the front. Bill would be down the back. Bill goes, "Yeah, I've got to play for this week," and they're going, and you go, "Yeah, what is it, Bill?" We'll do this for this, for this, for this, and Smithy would be sitting next to me. He'd be under his breath. We'd be going, "Wait for it, wait for it." And I'm thinking, wait for what? But then Bill's go, we'll go to here, we'll go to this, then we'll go to there, and Smithy's going, wait for it, and then Billy would go, out the back to me. and Smithy would go, there it is. Yep. But Billy was like, he always had moves, obviously moves involving him, and why wouldn't you be? But he would, for a fullback, he was ever thinking ahead and trying new things and wanted to push the envelope, wasn't he, Bill?
Mate, one of Bill's greatest strengths is obviously... Well, his greatest is the belief in himself, and he's very strong on, get the ball to your best players when you need it. And I think when I ran the blue shirt, Finchy, in the early years, I was amazed at how many plays, like Billy's always thinking, how do I get the ball? How can I be in this game? And I was amazed at how much he used to just badger Cooper with plays, and Coops would either ignore him or he'd actually come up with a play. So you've seen a lot of those. Me all the time. You've seen a lot of those ruck plays that they'd come up in and around the markers, and it'd just be Billy constantly probing and looking for a way to inject himself. And that's something that I'm working really hard with Kalen to get that in his game. You want those guys searching for opportunities to inject into the game.
Yeah, we'll mention talk to Kalen on those comparisons a bit later when we get to the nights. Just with bellyache. I went down there, I was 28, 29, and intimidation is probably not a better word. It's probably the respect I have for the guy. Even now when I see him or talk to him, if he goes, Finchy, how you going? I like to say, I'm doing really well, mate. I've got this in place. Still trying to impress him. I retired 7 years ago, Yep. Or Chambers, Will Chambers and Smithy, they were the only ones who could take they're the only ones who would take the piss out of Craig.
Yep.
And they would say something really funny. And I just wouldn't laugh. I was not laughing about a joke. And they would look at me and just go, you're weak as piss, Finchy, because I was not fucking taking the piss laughing in front of Bellyache. How was that as a young coach who you're coming into the club? You come as an assistant coach. He's already got a couple of premierships under his belt.
Yep.
Did you feel that intimidation, or that maybe not intimidation is the right word, but that you're working with one of the best coaches, like this is not any gig, just on down the local footy oval. This is the cream of the crop in one of the best clubs in the country.
Yeah, that's right. He's certainly got an aura around him, Belzer. But I think one of the things that helped me early on, I'd done a couple of PD trips to the States with him, and I
got a few phone calls on a few of them.
Yeah,
I think it was Tennessee one.
Nashville, great place. You need to get there. I reckon that really helped with our relationship. You worked pretty hard during the day. We were visiting a lot of the sporting organisations over there, but you're having a few beers at night and you get to know each other. And I've got a few good yarns about Craig when he's over there, and he's certainly evolved as well. He's not the cranky coach that was in 2007 and 8 and 9. He's evolved, but
you used to say you'd go for beers and he'd be waking you up next morning, let's go to the gym at 6. Yeah.
Mate, we done a workout session. That's one thing you know about Craig. He doesn't miss too many opportunities to have a workout. And we're in this it was at Texas somewhere or something. We're in a hotel. There was no gym there, and I'm thinking, beauty, we've got a day off here. And because he didn't road run too much, with his legs, but mate, he come up with this circuit that was in his room in between these two double beds. Mate, I was exhausted. I don't know how long it took him to think it up, but it was military-like. And, we ran the piss off us.
Yeah,
quick.
Well, let me tell you, when I think of circuits in between two double beds in motel rooms, it's certainly got nothing to do with that sort of exercise.
Yeah.
So you go on 2018. Well, your name has been tossed around as a front runner for a lot of clubs, but the Sydney Roosters chase you. They go after you. How big a decision was that? And Trent Robinson, and I've never been coached by Trent, but I know Trent really well. and I put him in the same class as Bellyache. I think he's just a superb coach, one of the greatest coaches, and he'll go down as one of the greatest coaches, if not already. He comes after you. How hard is that to tell Craig that you're leaving?
Yeah, easily one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'd actually met with Robbo previous in 16, and we had some discussions then, and it didn't come to fruition. I wanted to stay in Melbourne, and it wasn't until after 2017, and I just knew I'd been there a long time. We'd been away from family. We had some family stuff that we thought getting back closer to obviously not in Bateman's Bay, but getting back home was important. But the other part of it, Finchy, was I only knew the one way, and it was a bloody good way, the Storm way. But I thought that I needed to go to a culture. I wanted to go to a winning culture, but one that was different. And I thought this will, if I really want to make a head coach one day, then it's important that I branch out and evolve a little bit. And it's certainly. I was only there the 12 months, but there are differences between the two. But they're both hugely successful, so I use bits of both.
So before you go, you get beaten by the Chooks in the grand final, but you get awarded life membership at the club before you go.
Yeah,
that's pretty. They don't hand them out.
No, and
too cheap.
That's the caliber of Bellyache. You talk about loyalty and just good human beings. I think I told him that I was going to what were pretty much his arch rivals, the Roosters, that I was going to go and accept an offer to go up there. And instead of getting the shits and pushing me to the side, 5 days later he makes me a life member of the club. So that says a lot about him there.
So you go to the Chooks. How does it feel walking into the joint when you've just come from – they've just won the grand final. So they've won the grand final. And like when you go to Melbourne – you're going into as an attack coach, and you've already got these blokes who have been hugely successful. It's not a pile of shit, so they're just going to take any advice. You're now coming into another team that's won the comp.
Yep.
And you're now attacking coach. How was that? Was it hard? Was it uncomfortable? Was it?
Yeah. There's two parts that were uncomfortable. The fierce rivalry between Melbourne, and not from all of the players, but I could certainly feel from some of them that I was still the Melbourne guy early on.
But, you hate – like I used to hate, before I went to Melbourne, I used to hate Smithy.
Yep.
Now, I didn't know him.
Yep.
But just because he won and he was a Queenslander and he won it, you develop a dislike for people when you don't even know them. And the Roosters and Storm got that because I think, I look back in 2004 when I was at the Roosters and we played the Bulldogs. Yep. We had a big rivalry, but of course we were seeing each other at nightclubs and bars. You got on good mates with them,
Yep.
You wouldn't talk to them the week of the game, but after it, you mate. Where these two teams are in different cities, so you don't see each other.
Exactly.
And a lot of them play against each other in Origin.
Yeah, I was certainly like that with Jared. I had this healthy dislike for Jared, and I said to my wife Sharon about a month after getting there, I could not stand this bloke, and right now as it stands, I've only been here a month, and if we were getting married next week, he'd be invited to the wedding.
He'd be the best man.
He was such a good fella. But certainly guys like Boyd and Jake Friend and they were the ones that I thought this is going to take a little bit of time to connect with them. And it did initially. They're the leaders of the club and have led that rivalry.
And I guess you're working more so with Cooper and Luke Keary and those guys, not as much with the...
Yeah, initially, I was doing a lot of the edge stuff. I transitioned to do, a bit more team attack and forwards later on with Kingy being there. He helped out with the backs as well. But I think very similar to my early days at the Storm. I think once the boys knew that I was invested and working hard, then they were going to accept you. I think the hardest thing, mate, was... I think the first month there was a lot of highlights shown from the 18 grand final, and that was burning in me too. But eventually I become a Rooster for the rest of the year.
Mate, you play the Storm that year. How hard was it to prepare against for Melbourne?
Yeah, easily the first game. Easily the hardest thing all year was the first game down in Melbourne.
And is that Latrell kicks the field goal to win?
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember seeing there, Robbo's up jumping around. You're sitting in the corner. It's like you didn't know how to react. Mate, it's like a soccer player when he plays his former club. The old school etiquette's not to celebrate.
Yeah, I really struggled all week with that, and I thought, well, it's not about you, it's about the players, so just get on with it. But, yeah, going into the stadium and into the next dressing room, and then I was mate, you're 100% right, I was really conflicted at the end of the game. I was so happy we won, and especially the way we won, because I'm fiercely competitive. But I had in the back of my mind, be respectful to Bellyache. So I didn't want to get caught on camera. I actually went up the back of the room to celebrate. A bit of a fist pump. But I think
Bellyache used to go up the back of the room to fucking punch holes in the wall.
Yeah, stick his head through the wall. But it was tough. It was a lot easier the second time we played in Adelaide, and then obviously at the back end of the year, you'd never get. You're always attached to it, and you know yourself. 100%. You're attached to Melbourne, and but I want to beat them, and after the game, then. I think putting them out of the competition last year, I didn't like seeing the hurt on some of their faces, but at the same time, put in the same situation, you want to win.
Exactly. You don't want to go out. Now, you're in the sheds, the comparisons are obviously with Trent Robinson and Craig Bellamy. What are the comparisons like in the coach's box?
Robbo's got a blow up in him too, which you would have seen at the end of this year. He sort of come out in him. He's a lot more, I guess, measured than Bellyache, but one of Craig's strength is he can go from 0 to 500 and then back to 0 in 2 seconds.
Mate, he used to come into the sheds and be quite calm and controlled. I'd go back and watch the tape during the week, and you'd see him losing his shit in the sheds, in the box. But he'd come down to the change room and be, like you said, he'd be flat as like in terms of he wouldn't be off his head, he wouldn't be yelling and screaming, he'd be quite calm and composed.
Mate, he'd be screaming his head off, and then you wouldn't be facing him, you'd be watching the game, and then all of a sudden you'd hear this, fuck, that's a good tackle. And you'd think, how's he come down so quickly? But that's when he coaches the best, when he's invested. And I remember a funny story. Like, there's been heaps of funny stories in the coach's box. I've had two, actually. I was running the blue shirt one night at Leichhardt, and I'm on the walkie-talkie, and we weren't playing well. It was pissing down.
Never went good at Leichhardt.
Nah, and it was knee deep in water.
Is that 2013?
It might have been. It was after Origin. It was 3 days after Origin, and the conditions didn't suit Billy at all, and he wasn't playing well. I think he threw 2 intercept passes early in the game. Nofaluma rang the length.
Yeah, it's 2013.
Anyway, so I've picked up the walkie-talkie, and Craig is going berserk, and he says, Adam, can you go out and see, and not as calmly as I'm saying it now, he's swearing his head off, and said, go and see Billy. If he doesn't want to play tonight, he can put the dry clothes on and come upstairs for the rest of the game. So normally you would often filter whatever's, you're not going to come out and say exactly what's coming from the box. But I put the walkie-talkie down on the seat, and I think I took one step, and I hear Billy out goes, and Adam. And I pick it up, and he says, and I want you to say that word for word.
So he knew you might change it.
So,
mate, Billy is as snappy and as angry, competitive. Like, he's as competitive as any human I know. Yep. He wouldn't have been.
If there's anyone you don't want to give that message to, it's Bill. So I ran out there and jogged along beside him, and I actually said it word for word. I said, mate, if Bill said, if you don't want to be out here tonight, you can put the dry clothes on and go upstairs. And as Bill sort of jogged off, he said, I'll let you know.
Mate, I remember one time in there, I'd retired in 2013. I was still a single boy, so I'd be coming down to Melbourne a lot. I'd moved back to Sydney, but I'd still come back, especially the start of the next season, 2014. But anyway, I'm up in the box. There's a certain player who was at the club who had issues, I won't name his name, had issues with hard work and his weight, and he was probably a little out of shape. Yep. And on one kick chase, he walked the whole kick chase, and he just was not in the line. And I remember sitting in the box, standing in the box right behind you and Craig starts going to Justin Morgan, who was the assistant coach, get him off.
I remember.
Morgs, get him off. And his voice kept get him off, get him off. And you could feel the tension build, because every tackle, he's not in the line. This bloke walked up. Like, it was quite bizarre that it's like he just gave up and and it kept going, get him off, get get him on and get building. You could feel it, and the nervousness. And I remember sort of half getting on my toes behind it, and I went, "Somebody get him off!"
Yeah, I was clearly remember that day.
How nervous. Like I was nervous just sitting there because I could feel Craig.
Yeah,
the energy coming out of him.
And thankfully we got him off. Yeah.
But was that hard to not get caught up in that? And I wasn't even a coach. I was just up there as a former player. He invited me in the box.
Yeah, look, I knew early on that we both couldn't have, because I got a blow up. You've seen this year, I've had a blow up in me. I'm trying to get better at that, but both couldn't be like it. So I was the filter from Craig to the bench. So you're like a pit crew. You're not going to be effective for the team.
And is that similar with Robbo?
Yeah, definitely. Again, Robbo isn't. I reckon with Robbo, he's not so much the blow ups and the swearing and that, but he can certainly let you know what he's thinking at the time. Two different guys.
What impressed you about Robbo?
Oh, highly intelligent. Yeah, just next level. Well, I knew that he was a bright sort of guy, but and he's got deep care for his players.
Is that one thing you've seen? Sorry to interrupt. We'll go back. Is that one thing you've seen, and that's what I relate with yourself?
Yep.
With Craig, and that
common
genuinely you care for your players.
Absolutely. That's your connection to your players is paramount, I think, and you have to care for them. To ask them to do what they've got to go out and do, then it's important that you search for ways to show that you care. And I think especially if you're a direct coach, if you're quick to kick blokes up the arse, then they'll accept it as long as they know that you're caring about them. So, but yeah, look, with Robbo, I think his greatest strength, you could put him in the room with, a parliament, politicians, and he'd hold his own, and then you could drop him in a room full of bikies and he's hold his own. So he's got a good ability to connect with people.
Me and Robbo have been mates for a while. One of my best mates, Brad Kelly, is Robbo's great mate of Robbo's. They played together in France. So I've known Robbo for a while. We were sitting at his wedding. Brad Kelly's my mate's wedding, and I was groomsman, and it was about 3 or 4 years ago. And there was a year they had that shit year the next year. I think they had the Piercy incident.
16,
and they had that 16.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's the end of that year, start of that year, January. And I said, how you looking, Robbo? Just talking footy. He goes, mate, I think we're going to struggle this year. So I don't think we'll go as good this year. Because they just come off 3 minor premierships, and they won in 13, 14, 15. So I don't think I'll go that good this year. We might not go as good this year, but I guarantee you we'll win the comp within a year or two after that. Well, they won it 18, 19.
Yep.
So pretty much they come third, then first.
Yep.
To pick something like that, I thought, fuck. I remember looking back on that and just thought, mate, that's highly intelligent to pick. He picked that, have a down year.
Yep.
And then said within a year or two after that, we'll win the comp.
Yeah, he's that really stood out for me too, Finchy. When I went there in 2018, so Melbourne's pre-season, you'll be cherry ripe round one. You'll be as fit as you're going to be round one, and Craig, it places huge importance on the pre-season, and that sets your season up, whereas Robbo's different. He'll add layers to the season. So you're not going to be at your best round one, but he'll add layers to it, and he's sort of got a good ability to peak his team when he needs to. Obviously, this year's been a challenge for them, with COVID and some injuries and stuff. But, his ability to have that, to predict the future. And I guess it helps with the team that you've got too. That certainly plays a big part. But, yeah, he's in terms of his vision and then how he takes the steps to get there, he's next level with that.
Who impressed you to work with at the Roosters? What was the guys like Tedesco and that like to work with?
Yeah,
Keary?
Excellent. I loved working with Keary. Obviously, we had Cooper there, so I had a connection already. But I really enjoyed my time with Luke. Just such a competitor, but
little knockabout too.
Yeah, and just he'd walk into your office with that big smile, and it's hard to be in a bad mood when you're around him. And I really connected with Rads. Rads actually come up here the other day for breakfast.
Radley,
and he's a good young bloke. There's plenty of lad in him.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, they were all really good guys. You know, I couldn't fault any of them. But I enjoyed my time with Kingy and Fitz, the two assistants. I learned a lot from Fitz.
You'd worked with Fitz previously with Country Origin.
Yeah, yep. So I was Fitz's assistant in the Country Origin team for 2 years, and outstanding, person, but very, very well educated on the game and communicates really well. And Kingy was the same. Kingy was a real close mate that I could bounce stuff off, and I really enjoyed the year that I had there.
Mate, talk to me about your relationship with Cooper. Cooper's a different cat, say to me, and I get on great with Cooper. We played in Hearts, we got on great, but we're obviously two different blokes. How was it like dealing with Cooper? I'm not dealing with, working with Cooper in 2017. Obviously, 18, 19, he's not at the peak of his powers. Yep. He's at the back end of his shit, still playing at a very good level.
Yep.
But probably not the same level as you're going to do at 17, 16, 15, to those years. Did you adjust anything or change anything? Because he's extremely smart about how he goes his own work. Did he see ways, well, I probably can't do this as good as I used to, let's work in these areas? Or
Absolutely. He has a really good he knows his own game and he knows the team's game. So, when we're coming up with structures that suit Coops, but he's also willing to go, I think this suits, to go left to Munster, that suits him better. I think that was one of the things that helped us in 17, that whilst I was asking Craig for us to be a little bit nomadic with the footy, you still had Coops there to, if shit was hitting the fan and we were going a little bit wild, he could bring us back in. So, he played a big part in that. And, I've got a good relationship with Coops. He's helped me a lot over the years.
Did you see much of a change when he was at the Roosters?
Not personally.
No, but in terms of how you went about business?
I think Coops played a massive part in developing Luke, and it was interesting to see some guys as they're getting older get a little bit more selfish and want to hang on to that.
Which your ego, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, but that was the opposite with Coops. He really wanted to invest in Luke and understood that, his time, wasn't going to be there forever. So leaving the place, the old saying, leave it better than you found it. I think that's what drove Coops.
So you signed for 3 years, right, at the Roosters. The Newcastle Knights come knocking on the door mid-season. And you're the next cab off the rank. For a few years now, and for rightly so, your reputation has preceded you as a assistant coach. You've been involved in some terrific clubs, outstanding success. You made, I think, 4 or 5 years straight. You're in grand finals. Your teams you worked with as an attack coach led the league in 3 years in a row. And set new standards. Like the Storm in 17 went to a new level. The Roosters, even though they won the coach, you changed the attack they played, and their attack was a lot better in 2019. So you signed for 3 years at the Roosters, but the every first grade coach job that comes up, you're the name that's always thrown up, and the Knights.
Yep.
So this wasn't the first job that's offered. You turned a lot down.
Yep.
What was it about the Knights? One, what was it about the job when it first came up that interested you? And two, you're still contracted for another 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Run us through those situations.
Yeah. Well, the first part was there was a few jobs in Australia and in England that I found I was usually in the last paragraph of the article.
Yeah. And you might not have spoke to them, but it was always your name was linked to every.
Yeah, and a lot of them I hadn't. I was really close to going to Warrington at one stage a few years back, and I spoke to Craig, and I was very close at doing that, and I just thought, just be a little bit more patient and wait for the right one. I knew you don't want to rush in and just pick one for the sake of it. It had to be the right fit for me, and certainly the Knights one was the initial feeling when I'd heard that there was some interest. I knew that I felt differently about that one straight away, where the others I didn't sort of get that feeling.
Because it's not like they were a scrap heap. You didn't have to build, like they needed change. Yep. They'd underachieved, and you know what you're like. You're obviously still building, and we'll get to that later. But it's not like you're coming from ground zero.
No, definitely not. I think the club, Nathan, and the administration had done a really good job at signing some, the key ingredients were there for a team. So they've done a really good job at bringing the cattle in. And certainly, if you're going to take on a job, it needs to be the right fit for you. But the roster plays a massive part. So that the roster really fit the bill. But I think the number one for me was it just felt similar to how I'd been brought up, this town. I thought this is the right town for me. It's a rugby league town, blue collar. It gets me closer back to how I was raised, and coming here over the years and being at McDonald Jones Stadium, I was really envious of the atmosphere, and I just wanted to be a part of it. I knew right away, straight away, that this could be good for me.
Yeah, and I remember you spoke to me about it, and obviously I'm from this town. I ball boyed at the Knights back in the night. My dad was a part of the fabric that created the Knights, the culture there, and I know what this town's about, even though I didn't play for the club. My family has a deep history with the club. So I know what it's about. I remember running out as a ball boy. The gates would be locked. If they're playing Manly or the Broncos, mid-90s, the gates are locked at half-time reserve grade.
Yep.
Yep. You were playing under 21s in front of 30,000 people, reserve grade. It was massive. And I remember you rang me and talk about it, and I remember just I explained my take on the Knights. I thought they needed... I was quite frustrated. They had the ingredients there, but there's some blokes probably it needed to improve. But in the end, I thought, it just sounded. I remember saying, I think you know the answer you're looking for. I think you're just. Would I want to take the job? Yes, if that's. I think you. By the sound of it, I knew you felt differently about it from talking to you. You could tell.
Yep.
The big stumbling block, I guess, then is that you're only in your first year of a 3-year contract.
Yeah, 1 year in.
How do you handle that part?
Yeah, look, it was really tough. Back to the job. I spoke to people that I trust, obviously yourself and Craig certainly, and Frank Panisi, and everybody sounded exactly the same about saying that's the right fit for you. That was really hard in terms of signing a 3-year deal at the Chooks, and then every coach has assistant coach has a head coaching clause in there, and I'd actually been pretty upfront with Robbo around some other jobs earlier in the season and said, "No, mate, I'm not looking to go anywhere," because they weren't the right jobs. It was probably the wrong wording at the time, saying I'm not looking to go anywhere, mate. I'm here and stuff like that. But then when this one came, and I actually went in and said, because there'd been some rumours going around that they'd been talking about, and it wasn't the case.
It's not like rumours to be fake in rugby league.
Yeah, so, and again, I'd been associated with every job going, so it wasn't until Nathan resigned that day that I got a call from my manager and said that they were interested to talk, and I went and spoke to Robbo, and I think he was initially, annoyed and thought, mate, I still clearly remember that I'm here. And so that was really difficult because as we started the show with about loyalties and nature, I really struggled with you're not showing much loyalty. Like Finch, I've got the same phone company, same bank. I've never left anyone, and
I've had to leave banks because I owe money. I guess.
So it was tough. It was talking to Nick and Robbo for the first week was. It was awful, actually, because of the media coverage, and I wasn't used to it, and Sharon certainly wasn't used to it, and all of a sudden I got neighbours glaring at me. And but after that, I think once the Roosters understood that I was going to fulfil my commitments for that year, and I was going to work my backside off to make sure that we got what we wanted, I think everything settled down. And look, I have a great relationship with them now. I often ring Robbo.
Yeah, and I think they probably once a disappointment. Because that's good that they're disappointed. If the first thing they say is, go for your life, you're thinking, well, fuck, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. Yeah. That's like when I left Parramatta in 2009, we couldn't win. They went on about a 15-game winning streak. I went, geez, that's not good for the there you go. Yeah, so that's probably a sign of respect for you that they didn't want you to go.
Yeah, look, I think it's one way of looking at it now. At the time, I probably didn't see it that way. But, look, as I said, I'm really fortunate and thankful and grateful for the time that I had there, but I would have regretted this for the rest of my life had I not jumped at it. And
it's not, and like you said, this is the chance that where the club would have finished 9th, 10th last year. Obviously, the end, 2019, the finish was really poor, but You're talking middle of the season. I was sitting fourth on the ladder. They had a huge win here against the Roosters. So that you're not going into a scrap heap. You're not going into a shit fight, and or a shit team where in a year or two time you might be out the back door. Like this is a club that you can see yourself setting up and being a part of for a long time. So I'm sure they took that into account. Yeah. The opportunity that was presented for you.
Yeah, I think Robbo actually said that after a couple of weeks, and it was he thought that it was a good fit. And I think back to the reason why the Knights, I think as a young coach, when you want to take on a position, the first thing you want to look at is the roster, but then also the financial stability of the club, and Wests have certainly provided that. There's some exciting things coming in terms of the centre of excellence getting built here, and it ticked every box that you would need to be ticked to take on as a rookie coach.
So you get up to Newcastle, day one you're in Newcastle, day one you walk in the office, and now you're head honcho. You're the big dog. You're the head coach. It's different now. There's a big difference between a head coach and an assistant coach.
Yep.
What was the feel like walking in, and especially going into a club where you haven't been before, and you're going in as the top dog?
No, so I've done it a little bit differently actually. I after the grand final with the Roosters, we had a couple of days celebrating, and I remember saying to Sharon, it got to about. It must have been the weekend after, and I just thought I just want to get up there. I wasn't due to arrive for another 2 or 3 weeks, but I got her to drive me to the train station. I had a backpack with some clothes in it, and
she's like, Jesus, excited. You were just hungover and want to get out of the house.
Yeah. I had the black dog chasing me around, so I got dropped off at Central Station and caught the train up and. Organised some accommodation and just went into the club. I thought I'll just get in there and get a feel for the joint without anyone being there. And I rolled in at about 7:30 on the first day, and there was 19 players training. They weren't meant to be there for another month, but they were all out there training.
That's a good sign.
And I thought, well, there's no staff there. You couldn't have staff with them because you're obviously not meant to be trained. Well, they don't have to train. And I thought, geez, that's a good sign. And I remember the night, so I've gone and introduced myself, and they must have gone on one of the WhatsApp group or whatever, because 19 become 26 the next day. They were all
shit, boys. You better get your boots on and get down.
Yeah. So, look, it was a strange feeling, but walking in as the head coach, but it's the whole joint's full of good people, and they just want to win. So
one of those good people. Who's also a very close mate of mine, the number 7 and your captain, Mitchell Pearce. I remember the first thing he called me and we spoke about you, and obviously we're super close, and I said, mate, you'll love the bloke. Because when I look at Pearcey, I see a lot of myself in Mitchell at that age and how we played and the role we have in a team where we haven't probably been the greatest leaders at times in terms of, we're older single blokes, we haven't settled down as but, you're a great team man, the person in the shed's you're really a locker room guy, so to speak. And we had similar paths and have cop criticism the same. So we get on great, and I just knew he'd get on great with you. And what was his? That must have been a big reason why you came, because you had a number 7 of his quality already locked in at the club. What's it been like to work with Mitchell, and what were your first impressions of Mitchell coming up here?
Yeah, mate, everything you just said then is 100% right. I'd met Mitchell a couple of years before. I actually done a course that his old man was running, and Mitchell was doing the course as well. So I sat beside him, and that was the first sort of introduction I had to him. And he just was so energetic, and that's exactly who he is at training every day. Like you won't get a better trainer than Mitchell, and I think that summed up his season as well in terms of his effort. Every week I know he's going to try his backside off, and not everything's going to work, and certainly the changes to key personnel in and around the 6 position and the 9 affected Mitchell more than anyone else. But he just, I admire the way, in terms of leadership, he is a clear example to the boys every day of going and competing. And, probably, with all due respect to all the other guys that I work with, his fitness and his ability with skill is next level.
Yeah. One thing I see with Pearcey, and I think it was a bit like myself, you have that, one of his traits is his believability, like the team believes in him. whatever he's doing, it might be wrong, but the team's with him. You know, shit, we're going down this path, but we're going down with you. Definitely. Or if they make a mistake, you know, I found with myself or something, if you make a mistake, the team will give you a hall pass because, mate, we know you're trying. We know you didn't deliberately throw the intercept. We know you missed the tackle, you still put your body in front. You tried to make the tackle. You're not jumping out of the way. You know, so they're with you. And that's a really important trait to have as a halfback. You need that believability that, righto, boys, we can do this. And everyone's with you, you know, because you've been a part of teams where, you know, where the key players, they're like, well, fucking, can we? Or, you know, they're second-guessing your decisions. Yep. You're never going to be successful.
No, and that's another part that I really love about Junior. If something doesn't work, you know, if we come up with something that we didn't execute well, he doesn't shirk his responsibility. He'll get off the line and put his body in front, and you know he's not going to make every tackle, but he won't not make tackles from not wanting to be there, and that's what I think that's why he gets a lot of I guess credit from in particular the forwards. They'll back him to the hilt because he's going to try his backside off, and they know that.
So, what was your first impressions of the team when you come here, and what did you think you needed? What did you think they needed to improve, or what did you see in individuals that you thought you could improve within the team?
Yeah, I thought my initial, and it's something that I addressed with the team, I thought, and we haven't fully eradicated it either this year. In the, you know, when things are good, things are really good. They're very much a field team, which can be, you know, a great positive as well. But certainly, I thought when things are going good, things are going good, and then
things are good, they're great.
Yeah, and then when things are sort of going against you, they've and you've got to bear in mind it's been a long time since they've had, you know, some success. So I know through Melbourne or through the Roosters, if you're going through a bit of a slump or a bit of a bad patch, it's not too far back that you can go back and
you're playing well.
Yeah, and you can drag some. Hang on, we've been in this situation before. We know what works for us. Let's go back to that. Whereas, you know, unfortunately for some of these guys, some guys have played 100 games and won 20. You know,
and how was that? Because I know I've been a part of teams where you're on a losing streak, or you're not a successful team. So, but if you lose by 2 points or only 4 points, well, you start feeling like that's all right. Your standards obviously drop. A lot of these guys, like you said, like the young back rowers, Barnett, Fitzgibbon, a lot of these fellas, Ponga, they've come through that tough period for the Knights where they lost a lot of games. Like you said, how hard is it now to change that expectation, or do they have it? You can easily set an expectation of is a lot lower because they're a part of teams that weren't as successful. Did you need to change that with those guys or within the club generally?
Well, certainly.
Or were they crying out for someone to grab the team and go, this is where we've got to be?
Definitely. So certainly, as I mentioned, the first day I rolled in, there's 19 of them training, and straight away that tells me that they want to win, you know, and there's no, you know, hiding the fact that there's guys in that room that desperately want to win. Now, we need to continually work at that every day. There's no point just trying to win the last game of the season, the grand final, until we get the steps of the processes right that, you know, the teams like the Melbournes and Canberra and Roosters and that do. We've got to work hard every single day at getting all the little wins, because you get enough little wins and the big ones will take care of themselves.
What did you think of the season in general? Now, I called you after the game against the Dogs. Against South in the semi-final when they beat you and you were out, and congratulated on your season. You know, from outside in, one, I'm your mate, but two, that this is a club that's the first time they've made the semi-finals in 7 years.
Yep.
They've made huge steps. While I knew you'd be disappointed, and I knew it's nowhere near the finished product. To be able to sit back now after a couple of weeks, what sort of positives did you take out of the year, and what other things you need to improve going forward?
Yeah, look. Reflection. It was an extremely, tough year, and I think a lot of teams will say the same. But I looked at the way I was really proud of our pre-season, not just in terms of the training ethic and the work that we got done, but we've done a lot of community work in around the bushfires, and just thought we've got a really good bunch of people here, like good fellas, and that's a big recipe for success. You get good people in your joint that want to work hard. That's a big foundation that you need, and I felt like we've had that. the way we started the season, we looked really connected. We looked in good physical condition, and obviously banked the first 2 wins. I was really happy with the first game. Obviously got a 0 first up against the Warriors. So I thought, we're on to get their love of defence. I thought that was really important. We need to love defence, and I think guys,
not many do they?
Nah,
the good teams do.
Yeah, and I think if you want to connect to your community, the people in Newcastle that stand up on that hill and have a beer and watch their team, if you defend your try line and you have a dig, and you mightn't get the result that day, but they'll go home pretty satisfied that you've had a crack. So that comes out in your defence. So
now you're starting a new job, and there's a pandemic that hits.
Yep.
There's injuries that hits, but I'll go back before that. It's something I'm not too sure if people, general public, knew. Your hometown is ravaged by bushfires.
Yeah.
Your family and friends their lives are in danger. And I remember talking to you. You had to be up here. You couldn't help, and how hard it was for you because you'd spent some time back there. But your whole town, your whole community, your friends, your family, people you grew up with, is under, and a lot of it. There's a lot of destruction and a lot of heartbreak down there. How hard was that to do with those catastrophic bushfires we had?
Yeah,
and the Bateman's Bay and that South Coast area obviously copped a heavy toll.
Yeah, the hardest thing by a mile was being here, and a lot of the time you're cut off from phones. You were just really helpless that you couldn't go and help. I had
lives were at stake.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I clearly remember the terror on my mum's voice when I rang and she said, I've got to go. They're evacuating us, and she had. My brother-in-law was out the front and he was loading the car up, and mum was just getting whatever belongings she had to get out of there. And that really hit home to me. I thought, I'm up here and I'm safe, and all my loved ones and all my friends and family are down there. And it was terrifying, like looking at the town and where the people were on the beaches, and just I was really shocked and looked at the devastation. But I think the terror in my mum's voice really hit home to me. It was a really tough period.
Yeah, and how do you deal with that? Because you're starting a club for the first time as a head coach, and you've got to go to work with a clear head.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with this sort of pressure off the field and emotional pressure with with the bushfires back home.
Yeah, I think the players played a huge part in that. That they were really helpful in terms of doing whatever they could do. They were doing that for our region here, who had the same problem with the fires, but their willingness to raise money and to help out wherever they could was it just highlighted to me that they're a good bunch of blokes, and well, I guess it was over the Christmas period was when it was at its worst, and I wasn't at work, I was at home, but thankfully things sort of settled back down, and I don't think the town's fully overcome from it, but it's certainly in a better place than it was.
So you get through that, that's a once in a lifetime. The fires, which are just unbelievable. Then you get the COVID issue. I remember reading an article about going back on the tools. I was going to ask for a job, but you thinking this could be the world's shortest lived head coaching job if this game never gets back up again?
Yeah.
2 weeks and I'm out. I'm 2-0. I'm undefeated and I'm out the door.
I had blokes text me saying the most successful coach in NRL history is 2 from 2 and that's it. It's over. Look, it was really worrying. There was so many unknowns. Thankfully, for Peter Volandes jumped on board and got us back on track. But there for a while, there was going to be no money coming in. So I thought, I don't want to go. I could easily go home and work for mates back home. But I thought, if this thing starts up again, I need to be here. Yeah. The moment they say we are back on, I need to be here. And I wanted to be not too far from the players, but the club got a heap of connections. I only had to do the 1 day on the tools, which made Finch, I'm the world's worst handyman.
Yeah. Mate,
Sharon's the handyman.
You're the second worst. Well, I'm the worst. But that's just funny. Like, I'd done a bit of labouring for a mate this year, and but I'll sit there and I'll run for 100 Ks.
Yep.
You can flog me on the training paddock, and I won't whinge. Mate, you asked me to do some work. Mate, at Posmoco, I can't move. Like I'm just going, get me out of here. This is all too tough. Where I'll tackle 120 kilo blokes for a living.
Yep.
But you put yourself out of your comfort zone. It's another challenge in itself.
It's a humbling experience. I guess that's why the work program in Melbourne works so well. That for two reasons, you know better than the guy down the road. That's just because you're a footy player doesn't mean that you're better than the brickie down the road. Yeah. Because in actual fact, what he's doing today is probably harder than what you're going to do. So
playing PlayStation, most of these kids. Yeah. You come in one of the great young kids. Great young, not a kid, but a young man who's a superstar of the game, Kalen Ponga. How have you found him, and where do you think his game can get to? Where do you think things you can improve for him to continue to take strides in his career?
Yeah, my first impressions of him were he's a likeable young man. He's a little bit different. He has his interests outside of the game. Obviously, they're quite creative. Connor and young Tex Hoy. Yeah. So I enjoyed that about him. I think if you just want to sit there and talk about footy with him, they'll get bored of you pretty quick. So showing an interest in what they're doing outside of footy is really important. But he's an exceptional leader in terms of when he speaks in the meetings. Doesn't speak a lot, but when he does, makes complete sense, and he's quite direct and just has a good ability to be direct but not sort of lose anyone in the room as well. He doesn't upset anyone, but is quite clear on what he wants. I don't think he's anywhere near his ceiling just yet.
What do you think he needs to do to
I think understanding, similar to what we were talking about with Billy there before, understanding what he brings to the team and then searching for ways to go looking for that and create it himself. Yeah. So, and a lot of that will be around vision, but other stuff will be around his communication and demanding the ball. I think the thing that I need to get through to Kalen is he's an exceptional talent, and the more time we get him involved in the game, the better we're going to be. So that'll be a priority over the summer.
Mate, the horrific injury toll, especially with your number 9s. You're better off playing with no number.
Yeah, sticking a 1 in front of it.
Young Brayley goes down with a knee. I thought he started superb.
Yep.
And I thought your spine really found some groove early in the season, Brayley. I thought Kurt Mann was terrific at 5'8".
Yep.
And you're getting that combination good, and then all of a sudden,
Brayley
goes down, and then it sent off a chain reaction. You got McCulloch went down, Connor.
Yeah, Blake Green.
Greeny.
Yeah.
I think dominoes.
We spent a lot of the summer, Brayley played a big part in that, how we wanted to play.
So you do 6 months of training and then it's out the window in 6 weeks.
Yeah. Well, 2 games and gone. 2 games. And then I thought that we'd done a really good job with the club to be able to bring Andrew in, McCulloch. I thought, that's a really, really good buy.
He was very good, wasn't he? Will he stay here this year or will he go back to Brisbane?
He goes back to Brisbane next year, and then I think he's off contract. But he played a huge part. It just allowed us to be us again, and that's what Jaden did, early in the season with the first 2 games. Is you're not just losing one guy, you're losing the way about 5 guys have trained and played. So the ripple effect that it had on us, and then to get some continuity with Andrew there, and then to lose him and to lose Connor, and then I thought, okay, we'll bring Blake in and we'll move Kurt to 9, and thought, yep, we've done it again. We've managed to replace him, and had a really, really good win against the Tigers with Blake, and then I thought, now everybody gets to be themselves again.
And Blake's going to take control of that side, which is going to relieve pressure on Piercy.
Exactly. So not only are we bringing in Blake, but he's allowing Junior to be Junior and Kalen to be Kalen, and we looked really good. And then unfortunately Blake goes, and so you're just you're plugging leaks everywhere. It was as far as the first year. There was no manual for COVID and these big injuries. You just had to roll with the punches and get on with it.
You spoke about a lot about the consistency for the team. Is that somewhere where it needs to improve? Consistency? Because I found consistency as you get older, I found it's not about your week-to-week game consistency. It's about your day-to-day. It's about your session-to-session. It's how you live your life, how you prepare. You get consistency in that. And obviously I found that at Melbourne where The second year at Parramatta before I got to Melbourne, we could knock off the best team, when we were good, but the next week we'll get beat by the team coming last. We were terribly inconsistent.
Yep.
But you find in Melbourne you've got to be consistent from the weight session to the field sessions. It's a day-to-day consistency. It's an hour-to-hour consistency, not just Sunday to Sunday.
Definitely. I think it's what you do on Monday that the other teams aren't will give you an edge, both as a player and as a team. But the consistency, and this isn't on players, this is on me. I need to take a lot of responsibility in and around that in terms of, if we get beat, and it's since COVID. When we come back from COVID, we had 10 weeks straight, and these are going to sound like excuses, but when I sat back and reflected on the season, I think it was 21 games, 14 were away, 7 home games. We won 5 out of the 7, so I thought we can stump up here at home, but the travel took its toll.
Because it's on the day, isn't it? It's like you're back at park footy.
14
up
games,
and going.
Travel on the day. So we're not where we need to be in terms of, okay, you're not always going to wake up and feel good on game day. You're not always going to have, the best prep, but you still need to find a way to get it done. But before that happens, you're 100% right. We need to be really consistent on a day-to-day basis because ultimately there's no switch on Sunday. We need to prepare well all week. The only time I've been really disappointed this year was the Canterbury game. I thought Canterbury played really well. It wasn't the result. It was the week leading in that I'd started to see some signs of that. And not everybody, not your more experienced guys, but I'd seen us not seeing the things that we were seeing as important. They weren't as important now.
Yeah, so that comes with experience, doesn't it? Like one week you tick all the boxes and you win, and you play well, and you think, I've got that covered, I don't need to do it the next week. And sure enough, you get your pants pulled down on the weekend. That's
right. And then, if you get embarrassed on Sunday and you get flogged, then you tick at every box the next week and you're winning, and then you don't have that feeling again. So we're on a journey in terms of that, and that'll play a big part of pre-season.
Now, just a few other things off the field and off and around the club. The people you work with off the field, obviously, there's Alex McKinnon, who's a terrific fellow, Denny Badera, who I've known for a long time. How have those guys been to work with Willie Peters, your assistant coach?
Yep.
How's it been working with those guys in and around the club?
Yeah, excellent. I think Beds has been huge in terms of this is his first go at this.
Well, he's learning his role too, isn't he?
Exactly. So both of us have been thrown in and put COVID in there, but I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else. I often, when I think about Beds, the way he approaches his work, very similar to that kickoff in Origin that you see when he hit Webke under the post. He just goes after it and gets things done. And
was it a comforting fact that, knowing all those 3 guys I just mentioned, to be a rookie coach, it's a whole new ballgame, but to know, well, those 3 blokes, Bedsy, Denny Badera, Alex McKinnon and Willie Peters, they've got me back.
Yep.
I know they're not going to I know and you've been in a situation, there's coaching teams and there's assistant coaches, well, fucking, is this bloke trying to get me a job or does this bloke to have that at your first year, to know those guys are they're rock solid blokes in terms of character and personality. Definitely.
It's vital, when you're going through turbulent times or in the trenches, you want guys that are going to stand with you. Yeah. And I've got that not only in those 3, but certainly those 3. Like Alex is just well beyond his years. Yeah. Very mature guy, but just so passionate about the club. And then the other staff in Rory, who I spent time with at Melbourne, and I grew up with Eric Smith, who's our development coach, and I rely on him a lot. He's actually coached in Melbourne as well, so he understands how I want to do things. And I'm really fortunate with the staff. I feel like the whole club's full of the good people that are passionate, so we're heading in the right direction. We've just got to stay on course.
You spoke about Alex. You spoke about Eric, the development coach. Some young talent in the club. You got some terrific young kids there. You mentioned Tex Hoy. It makes me feel like, because I'm good mates with his old man Matt Hoy. He's just one of my good mates, old Hoyer. So I might have to pop in once I leave here on the way I see he's going. But there's Bradman Best. There's some terrific young kids there. How is the other talent going down through the grades here? Because it's always been a wonderful nursery, the Newcastle and Hunter region for footy players.
Yeah, definitely. I think young Bradman and staff at Toa certainly stand out. I thought staff had done a good job when he come in this year, and I see big things for him next year. Bradman is, he's an exceptional talent, very determined young man. He'd scare a dog out of a butcher shop the way he looks at you sometimes. Look, the region is full of good young kids. I think it's really important for us to identify the ones. You can't have them all. And we need to, I guess, as a club, accept that there are going to be kids that go and play for other clubs, and that's fine. As long as we've identified that they're not someone that we see fitting with us. If a young kid gets to go and play NRL somewhere, then I'm all for that. But it's certainly identifying the ones in our region that we see as being able to, pull on the Knights jersey for 50 games. Yeah. That's important.
This was a club that every kid wanted to play for Newcastle in the Newcastle region, Hunter region. It was like, if you're a Queenslander, you wanted to play for Brisbane. They're struggling. There was a time where, you didn't want to play for the Storm, or you wanted to, if I'm from Maitland or if I'm from Valentine, where I wanted to play for the Knights. That's what you want your kids. You want to produce a club that your kids want to play for the local team.
Absolutely, and I think that, saying before, around the centre of excellence and having, I think there's 4 footy fields there, and engaging our juniors, and not only the juniors, the local teams. It's a strong comp. Newcastle are really fortunate in that. So making sure we're connected. We don't sit above any of those. We sit with them.
Yeah, and a big thing here at this club, which I've seen what you've done, their Old Boys Day is huge up here. Similar to Melbourne, it's very the newer clubs, so to speak. The Knights come in 88, obviously the Storm in 98, 10 years later. But the passion with the older clubs. I know I've read somewhere you spoke to the Johns boys a lot about how to play. You've got Chief in here. How much of it, things like that, we've gone out of the way because this is really important to connect with the older players and the history of the club.
Absolutely. They've been unreal. I knew, every team has old boys, but this is an exceptional group of old boys, and they've been really helpful all year. I know Steve Crow, Kurt Gidley played in the Nines with us, Chief. Matty Johns, they've all worked on a video that we ran all year that were the parallels between 97 and obviously this season. And the thing I love about them is they really want the team to do well because they love the club and they love their town. You can have old boys that, sometimes
they don't want them to take the spotlight off the old boys.
Sometimes, old boys don't want another successful team.
Because they're the last successful team.
This one is completely they're excited. I wish we could have old boys every weekend because we play well the night against the Dragons when they were there. And it was a proud moment for me watching the team go over to the section of the crowd where all those old boys were. And I thought, again, another reason that this is the right place for me because of that, I guess, how I grew up, loving those guys that played on Sunday in Batemans Bay.
What sort of team do you looking to build here? What sort of club are you looking? Because it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
What sort of, when you look at, when you're sitting at home and you're thinking in a couple of years' time or in 12 months' time, 18 months, when you're looking at this is the club I want to have here, what do you see?
Yeah, I think
when you visualise it?
Very much, I've always heard about driving up the freeway for Sydney teams to come here. It was always going to be a tough night out.
We're not going to beat you.
Yep.
You might not, but we're going to bash you. That's
exactly.
Early days of the Knights.
You're going to cop a bruise and you were going to have to beat the Knights, and that's what I want. I want us to give ourselves a chance at every game, but being able to walk off and hold our head high in the community and then the fans that are there and our supporters and sponsors that we've had a crack. I can handle, losses, but I think if we become that consistent, tough, resilient footy team that I know that we can, and you fill that joint, that McDonald Jones Stadium, when you've got that team going and they get behind it, then anything's possible. But we've got to hold our end of we've got to hold our end of the bargain up and become that sort of tough, resilient footy team.
Mate, how has the change been from assistant? Was it as hard as you thought? Were there things new things you had to do with that you didn't as an assistant? That shit you didn't even think of that. How is it 12 months in when you look back? How How'd you think it went? How'd you go?
I guess the assistant coaches work bloody hard.
Yeah, long hours. But I guess there's things you don't do, like salary caps and media as much.
Exactly.
Or if Finchie's playing up on the weekend and Saturday night, your phone's going off at 5:30 in the morning, not the assistant coaches.
Well, there's certainly more things that will keep you lying awake.
Yeah.
Your phone goes through the roof. You've got to be really good at your time management, and it's okay to say no to some people because you need to keep the main thing the main thing. So I guess struggling with that because at first you want to do everything, but you end up doing nothing. So prioritising what's important, and then being really, I guess, diligent with your communication because, as I said, something will always pop up, especially this year. So there wasn't a night that I went to bed and got up the next morning where something hadn't gone. It's not always something wrong either, but whether it's
something's
a protocol.
thrown at you,
So I guess the assistant coaches, once they've watched their vision and come up with a bit of a training plan, then they can put their head down. But as an assistant, as a coach, you don't get it.
Mate, just recently there, I know you had the dress rumours about Piercy for all the Knights fans out there listening.
Yep.
Anymore. That's not
going anywhere.
Yeah, when I first read it, I thought, he's lost his mind already. 12 months in, he's already lost his mind.
No, and I don't know why or how those things come up, but, mate, I'm a pretty straight up bloke. I don't bullshit anyone. And as I said to a couple of the journos, that has never once come across a recruitment retention meeting that I've been involved. So how they come up with those things, but look, I guess that's their job.
Look, I see rugby league, isn't it?
I see Mitchell is coming back after he gets married, and we sit down with the club and
you going to his wedding?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, so am I. That should be fun.
They're looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to his Bucks party as well. I'll make sure I get him through one piece for you.
There is a good crew there apparently, so looking forward to it,
mate. You're looking ahead to next year. What are the expectations? What are the goals? You obviously it's. And I'm not here for you to rest on your laurels, but I know you still should be proud of this year. You made the finals. That I know that's not where you see the club, or that's not your end product, but that was a good first step. Albeit there's some things you want to improve. What are you looking at for next year? Where's
the number one priority for me in pre-season is I think we can evolve a lot in attack.
Combinations straight away help that, don't they?
Exactly.
Help a healthy roster.
Yeah, it's a wish list for next year. But spending a little bit more time across on the attack. I didn't do a whole lot this year, but I think that we can evolve in some areas. Certainly having a physical pre-season, getting the guys ready to go is important. But in terms of, I guess, people are happy that we've made the finals for the first time, but we're only one game better than what the teams that didn't make it. I can't help but be glass half, half empty. So I want more. I know we're capable of more. And finals is top eight's a bare minimum next year.
Well, just a quick one before we go. You mentioned there how you didn't do a lot of the attack. Now, why is that? Because I've dealt with, you're one of the smartest coaches I've ever dealt with or spoke to about attack, and you've come off some of the most record-breaking years of you being the attack coach of those teams. You think that would be your strong suit. What's your thoughts behind that as a coach?
Yeah, as I said before, I want the team to be a tough, resilient type team, and that comes out of your defence. And I thought at the time, look, I've worked in really good systems in Melbourne and the Roosters defensively, and one thing as an attack coach, you stare at defence all day, so you've got a handle on what's good defence and what's not. So I just thought the players here needed to know that the head coach is going to pick me if I make me tackles. So that's probably why I chose to go that way. I think certainly our defence at the back end of the year with the score lines went out the window, and I thought our attack probably put a bit of pressure on our defence. We weren't throwing enough at the opposition, so they were always energised to come at us. So just having a bit more of a blend in that. But like you said, personnel and having constant, I guess, connections and blokes standing beside each other is going to help in that. But I'll still stand by. That's how the players will get in this footy team, is if they defend well.
So if you've got a spot on the bench between two players, you'll pick the bloke who defends.
The defender,
better.
Yeah. I'm going to go to the defender every time.
Do you find that You know, do you see yourself doing things there? You look back on your time with Rob or belly out and go, "Oh, now I understand why."
Belly
you know,
out,
or something. You go, "Why? I don't know why they're doing that," but now you're head coach, you can understand why.
Yep, absolutely. As an attack coach, I think that you're always looking for the talented guy, and as a defensive coach, you're looking for the gritty character. So I find myself doing that with Craig. I remember, funny story, just back to Bellyache, and big learning curve for me was the season played for no points. There was an opportunity for him to blood players for next year. There was an opportunity to get 15, 20 games into a guy that you probably were going to have to use next year because guys had to move on. And he didn't do it. He didn't give a jersey away. Yeah. And that's probably stood out for me that you need to earn your jersey and certainly through defensive actions.
Well, mate, thanks for taking time out. It's great to see you up here. Again, I'm super proud of what you achieved this year. Not that that's the finished product or anything you're satisfied with, knowing exactly who you are, but I thought you did a terrific job in tough circumstances. And like you said, that's the bare minimum. And look forward to watching the Blue and Golds go around again next year being a competitive team once again. I know the people of the Hunter are really happy and look forward to catching up with you for a beer for Piercy's wedding. I just told everyone where Piercy's wedding is, so I don't know. That's great. But sorry about that, Piercy. But, mate, thanks for your time, and it's great to see you and Sharon up here having a ball.
Yeah, awesome, Finch. Thanks for having me, mate.
Thanks, brother.